Hey, KMC here. Today, June 19th, 2015, is the 10th anniversary of one of the most notorious Formula One races of all time, the US Grand Prix at Indianapolis in 2005. That day, only six cars took place in the race. All the other cars with Michelin tires pulled out after the formation lap. The Michelin tire would explode going through the 13th corner at Indianapolis after a number of laps. It was not constructed well enough to be able to handle the loads that corner put on it after a number of laps. So all the cars pulled out, and we had this farce of a race where only the six Bridgestone cars took place. Now I was there that day, and it was one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had in Formula One. I was sitting behind the grandstand having lunch just before the race was to begin, and a buddy from England text messaged me and asked me what was going on with the Michelin tires. Now, I hadn't seen a TV or a radio all weekend being at the track, and so I didn't know. I had seen Ralph Schumacher, who in the Williams had crashed at the last corner very heavily. I had seen that accident, but had no idea there was other stuff going on in the background and that the Michelin tire in general could not handle that corner. So I said I didn't know, and a few minutes later went up into the grandstand to see the start of the race. Now, while I was in the grandstand, my buddy again from England texted me and said all the Michelin cars were going to pull out after the formation lap. Well, I didn't believe him, but I announced it to everybody else in the grandstand around me, and no one else believed me. They all turned and looked at me and thought, oh, there's that drunk Canadian spewing his mouth again. Well, sure enough, at the end of the formation lap, all the Michelin cars started peeling off and going in the pit lane. It was one of the weirdest things I had ever seen. And then the grid with only the six cars, the two Ferraris at the very front, in like third or fifth position, something like that, and then the Jordan and Minardis who shared the last two rows of the grid. And it was a really weird experience. And then when they all came by, the of course the crowd started booing and throwing beer cans down onto the track, and it was a very unique and interesting and farcical race. Now, of course, who to blame for that race? People blame Michelin a little bit because they didn't build tires that were capable of sustaining themselves through the race. However, I don't blame Michelin so much. The teams aren't allowed to test on a lot of the circuits. For many of the circuits, the only time they see them each year is when they're there for the race. So the companies like Michelin have to do their best guess as to what they should do for performance and reliability when they come to the track. I blame the FIA. They were the only people who had the ability to change things, the only people who had the ability to make that race happen as it should. Now, one of the suggestions was to put a chicane at the last corner to slow that last corner down. Now, of course, that the FIA said no to that, as did Ferrari. But the FIA could have made it happen. Now, it seemed like everybody that day was thinking of themselves. The Michelin teams thinking of safety, which is great. But the FIA and Max Mosley, who could have been thinking about the most important people, the fans, did not.